Hello, everybody. I'm Raina from Blue Cypress Books, and I want to welcome you to Book Banter again this evening. Tonight, I am talking to Ryan Kurr, who is literally a jack of all trades. When you read his bio, there's ice cream maker, mystic practitioner, and author, and so many other things on there. I can't wait to talk to him about all of those and more this evening. His latest book, Powdered Oak and Seven Metals, is the second book in the Esoteric Alchemy series, which we have on our shelves signed at the bookstore, and we're going to talk about those as well as a little bit about his first book, Sugar Burn, which is about his time in the kitchen. And I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm actually just going to click this button and invite Ryan onto the screen. Hi, Ryan.
Hello.
How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Especially on this first day, it's King's Day. Have you had any king cake yet today?
I have not, but I've seen lots of pictures and they're popping up everywhere. So they're going to probably just consume me in the next few days.
Do you have one yet? Are you ready to go? Or you don't?
I don't.
Oh my gosh, you're unprepared.
I don't.
I have when we drove out to Adrian's Bakery. And picked one up, but haven't eaten any. It was like one thing after another after we picked it up just happened, and then I haven't gotten there. So dessert is coming this evening.
Yeah. Maybe many times tonight.
Oh my gosh. I was going to tell you, like, from December 19th to Mardi Gras is just crazy pants in my family. My birthday's December 19th. My son's birthday's the 21st. Then you've got Christmas. And then you get just a tiny... If you don't do too crazy for like New Year's, you get a tiny respite, and then there's like king cake and 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 king cake until Mardi Gras. So I guess.
Yeah, endless. And then if you go to a king cake party, it's even worse.
Oh, exactly.
Like 19 different kinds all at once.
And if you work, in anywhere where they particularly partake, you get one, and then whoever gets the king cake baby has to bring one. And us, oh my gosh, I don't work in an office, obviously work in a bookstore, but we do the same thing. So I imagine, though, being a pastry chef and an ice cream maker, you have had to have learned to pace yourself at this point.
Yeah, after a while you start to, at first you get really excited and you eat everything and you just gorge yourself, but after a while you kind of calm down a little bit, and then you do get a little sick of it after a while, except ice cream. That's different for me. I can't stop.
So were you a pastry chef first or an ice cream maker first?
Pastry chef. And I sort of experimented with ice cream kind of on the side. It was sort of something that I had to incorporate on menus and stuff at restaurants. But that was kind of the area I focused on a lot because it was my favorite part of the whole pastry world. And then it kind of just took off from there.
So when you say your favorite part of the pastry world, are they related in a way I don't understand?
Just like if a pastry chef has many different areas that they should be skilled in. There's bread making, there's, frozen desserts and things like that. So, and that aspect, like if you're doing plated desserts, there's many different components that would go on the plate for a single dessert. So that was always one that I was really excited about because it has like kind of a blank canvas that you can turn into anything. So I love ice cream.
So, okay, let's touch on your ice cream just a smidge because I actually have some. I have some of your ice cream right here. Arcana Creamery. I'm pronouncing that correctly, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And this happens to be dark chocolate, which you brought us so graciously yesterday. And I'm just going to have one bite, so don't make everybody jealous. But it is so good. I usually dark chocolate ice cream for me. It has a little bit of a bite at the very beginning, but then it just is chocolate ice cream.
Yeah.
Dark chocolate, like a bar of dark chocolate or a little piece, will have that tart taste afterwards, and your ice cream does that. I don't know how you do it, but 2 thumbs up.
Thank you.
2 thumbs up for sure. So I'm gonna put a link to your the website for your ice cream, your creamery. because I want everyone to have the opportunity to get their hands on this whenever they're in town, whenever you like. And you were telling me earlier, you can get it on your website by the pint or gallon or whatever more than that. So if you want some for a party or you want just some to take home.
For sure. All set up by pint on the website. You can always inquire if you need more.
Awesome. So now, the reason we're really here is to talk about your books. Even though the ice cream kind of overshadowed that a smidge. When did you start writing?
I have been always interested in writing. I think the first thing that I can remember is probably 5th grade, when I think I joined some sort of poetry club or something when I was in 5th grade, and that's kind of where it started. And then I wrote in my spare time. I would write short stories and little things here and there, and it was just always something I really liked. If I wasn't, writing, I was reading a book, and I think it really kind of took shape back in 2001, I believe, is when I started emailing everyone that was working in the department where I was working at the time. And I said, give me, 3 names, 3 skills, 3 places. And I took all of those and I turned it into a story. And that was kind of like my first experiment. And that experiment lasted about 5 years total. That was kind of me just figuring out how that works and what I'm doing on the page, which was not great, but you have to start somewhere. So that's kind of
Right.
where that started.
Well, that's a great kind of experiment because it gives you a lot of leeway, but also, puts you in this box too. It gives you an assignment. You've given yourself an assignment.
Right.
And yeah, I started writing as in when I was 12. My teacher was like, you got to keep a journal. We had to keep a journal for they give me credit. She's like, I don't care what you write in it. I'm just going to count the number of pages, right? If you're supposed to write however many days,
Mm-hmm.
and you get credit, easy credit, I'm in, right?
Yeah.
And that was like just this sort of forced habit, and to keep going and doing that. So you wrote Sugar Burn, which is about, you're saying about your time. So the tagline is the not so hot side of the sweet kitchen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't read it.
Yeah.
But I want to know, I've worked in kitchens. I've never worked as a pastry chef or anything, but I've worked in kitchens. I've worked in the front of house. Restaurants are crazy pants sometimes.
They are wild places for sure.
Is it as wild in a sweet kitchen?
I feel like people kind of think of dessert as like, oh, that's nice, but pastry chefs are crazy. They're crazy, and when you put crazy people in a kitchen, that's already already chaotic, and especially if you're new and you don't really know the rhythm of the kitchen, it can be a lot to deal with. So it's nuts.
Based on all of the like cooking shows that are specifically cake baking and pastries and desserts, I can see like there's a whole separate it's like a genre. It's like a genre in books. There are sci-fi readers, there are romance readers, there are mystery readers, there are nonfiction readers. That you can mix them, but they have definite like different feels to them. Yeah, for sure.
100%.
So I watched your segment with Wild Bill on WGNO recently.
Yeah.
And he asked you a question that I thought was really interesting. And the segment was short. You gave him an answer. I wonder if there's to be said. So one of the things he asked you was, how does being a mystic practitioner affect like he said, I think just your life, but I wonder about like each piece. Ice cream, your writing, I see those, but like for you, how do you feel like that ties in?
I think for me, I think the central factor is probably a sense of awareness, kind of always being hyper aware of something in some way, and having that ability to sort of step outside of that sort of tunnel vision that you get when you're working on something and you're really focused, and try to, kind of see what's on the periphery of that. Like with ice cream, you might have a specific idea or a flavor that you want to do. And I try to say, okay, well, this is what my intention is. And then I try to push the boundaries a little bit and think like, okay, well, what else could I do? What is something that maybe I'm not thinking of that I could bring into that? And what's something that I could do to mix with that? And so I always try to be open-minded and aware about what I'm doing and how I'm doing something. And there's a lot of thought behind it. So I think, and trying not to there's like a very fine line between being open-minded and being and overthinking something, which can also be a problem. So I think that's a nice thing that I'm always trying to balance.
That makes sense. It helps you keep focus and yet still have an open mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so Linda has a question. Everything you do is interesting. Which is your favorite? So if you had to pick one path, one career path or whatever, where would you go?
Oh, I don't know. That's people ask this a lot, and I never really truly know, but I always say writing, and I think that would probably be true. And I say that only because it's something that I've done the longest. I've done that, ever since I was very, very young. It never gets old. I always have something new to say, even when I start something, or I finish something and I think, okay, I don't know if I have anything else in me. I don't know if there's anything else I really want to say or explore through writing. And then, it always comes up. There's always something extra. There's always something more. And I think that's also something that I can do without getting tired as well. So being in the kitchen is very exhausting, and that's, over time that does wear you down a little bit. It is physical, and it can be really a big mental sort of exhausting thing as well, especially if you're in like a large scale kitchen or anything on large scale. So it would definitely be writing, I think.
So talking about your writing, your series, first of all, are these the only two in the series? Is there going to be more? There is
going to be one more, and I'm working on that right now.
Okay. So what inspired this series of books? First of all, give us the elevator pitch. What's the general storyline?
All right. So this series is about a group of witches that are pulled together from all sorts of different walks of life, who don't know that they have any powers. There's something that happens with the earth that has sort of activated a gene that allows them to perform magic. And that happens because there's certain things in the world that have fallen out of emotional balance and spiritual balance and physical balance. And so they have to find a way to restore all of that in a way.
And in the first book, if I remember correctly, it starts in New York City. Well, the coven starts in New York City, right? Mm-hmm. And then moves to New Orleans. And then in the second book goes to Colorado. I always want to say Denver, but it's not. It's outside Denver.
Right.
First of all, does Nova exist? I did not Google that.
It is fictional.
Okay. I usually do place names. I usually Google it because I've traveled to many places, and I've been in Colorado multiple times, little towns, big towns, and it didn't ring a bell, but that doesn't mean that's cousins.
Yeah.
So 2 questions. When she goes to Colorado, okay, is there, I know that in the book there is a reason for her to be pulled toward Colorado, but for you picking that area, to move a coven to, is there a reason? New Orleans made sense. We all know there's lots, it's a melting pot of all different kinds of spirituality and religions, really. So that I understood. Why the move to Colorado?
There's actually a few reasons behind it. One of them that is sort of unrelated to the actual story is when I was very young, I told myself, as a joke a little bit, but it sort of turned out to be true, that I would move around, and I would write about wherever I was living at the time. And so that has always been kind of in the back of my head whenever I do something. I always think, I want to write about, this place and really kind of immerse myself and, see what comes out of it that way. And then in line with the story, I thought I wanted to explore something that was very different from what the first one was. Not only as far as tone and pacing and stylistically, but also as far as the setting. Because I think one of my favorite types of books is like a style where the setting is actually like a character itself, and that's a really strong presence. And so that was kind of just me wanting to really challenge myself and make a big shift. So that was that.
So Linda has one more question.
Mhm.
When you find the time to write, which is a good way to put it, because clearly you're a very busy man, what is your writing routine? Do you have one?
I do. It took me a while to find it, and that kind of just developed on its own. One day I realized kind of what it was, but I used to. It has changed a little bit, but I used to pick one day a week that I knew I was free. I didn't have any other obligations, and I knew that I was most productive between 12 and 5 p.m. So I would distance myself from everyone, turn off my phone, avoid social media, and I would work on whatever I was working on from that time, whether that was just outlining or that was actually writing a chapter or doing some sort of character study, working on it in some way. And I would do that every week until I was finished. And then when I started to make the more like a bigger shift into writing, that sort of changed to a more of a daily practice. So it's usually about like 5 to 7 days a week where I will sit down, hopefully within that time frame that I know that I can kind of churn out the best stuff. And I'll do the same thing for about 5 hours a day. And I try to get a certain word count. I try to do like at least 1,000 words, if not 5,000 words. That's kind of like the maximum cap that I will do. Because just like anything else, the further you go, you kind of sacrifice maybe the integrity or like how well it's going to come out, because you get exhausted after a while. So that's kind of how I work.
Yeah, I've trying to be better with myself recently in letting myself step back. Like you're saying, well, you have to put this cap on what you're doing too, because you might be like, I've still got another hour. I'm gonna turn stuff out, but at the same time, usually that will suffer. You can, and sometimes I can feel it. Like I'm like, oh, I'm typing this, and I just know that this is not right.
Yeah.
And I used to just sort of push myself like, nope, this is it. This is my moment. This is my hours. Who knows, And now I'm like, I do better. Let's just walk away from it today, or outline, work on something else, go back, read it, do something, just stop with the churning it out.
See, and that's the thing that I always found that really helped, was that when I get into those periods, where I'm just like, no, I have to do this. I'm setting a time aside to do this, and I get really stuck, and then I just am unhappy with what I'm producing, and I'll take a break and I'll do something totally different, and I'll just like check out. And then often those are the times, like after an hour or so, I'll be like, oh, okay, now I know what I'm supposed to do. I can figure it out. But those breaks are really crucial. They really make a huge difference.
I wonder too if having that, I would love to work more like meditation into my day, because coming back and be able to refine that focus, or just giving yourself permission, and that moment of recentering and calming yourself is perfectly worth it. Like useful. I don't know what the right word is, but I feel like as a whole, we say, oh, that's not, I need to wait and do that later, or that's not as important. But I wonder if that daily practice that you have, that you already in your life in general, really helps with that as well.
Oh, I totally think so. I think, that once you do anything over a period of time and it becomes a habit, it becomes, really beneficial to you. And, speaking of meditation as well, that's something that I kind of treat in the same way. There's times where I will want to do it, but I'm just, not really feeling it, or it just feels off and I feel like I'm forcing it. And so, I know that I will do it eventually at some point during the day, if I don't get it done in the morning, but then I will do it when it's necessary and it feels right. And then I can finally, receive the full benefits of doing it.
So we have another question. It's a little
Okay.
setup. As a creative, I can't stop working. I'm like an art shark, like create or die. Do you find that to be true for you? It's the first part. Do you feel like you have to work?
Yes and no. I know that for me personally, being creative in some way is something that I do need to do. And I go through periods where I really struggle with when I'm not doing it. And I'm like, oh, I really wanted to work on this. I really want to finish this, or I'm just not feeling it. And then I start getting really upset with myself for not forcing myself to do it. But I try to be as kind to myself as I can. Um, Mostly just because of everything that we just said, because I know that, eventually it will happen. I do want to set aside time for it, but that can be flexible, is what I've learned. Because there has to be time for other things, and it's never all or nothing. When I try to put that label on something, it just never works for me.
And that kind of goes into that last bit of their question. How do you budget your time?
I think it depends on what I'm working on. I know that, if there's something that has sort of like a deadline, I will kind of keep that in the back of my mind, and I will make sure that I never get too close to procrastinating. Um, but I usually take breaks and segments. That's the best thing that works for me.
All right, so Ashley has a question. As someone who reads all genres and a first-time reader of your work, do you have a recommendation for what to start with?
As far as which one of my books?
I think so.
Well, I think it depends on if you are interested in more of like a personal narrative and a memoir style, or if you want something that's a little bit more fictional and fantasy based. I would say start with the fantasy. I would say start with Sage, Smoke, and Fire, just because that is a really strong start to the fantasy, and it's a little different than kind of everything else that I feel like I've read recently. So that's a good thing. I think I would start there.
One thing that I've read, like a review I've read that's been repeated, I guess, a phrase that's been repeated in the reviews that I've read of your books, and what I've experienced so far reading your books, is that you're very true to the witchcraft in the books. I don't know if that's the right term, but that culture and those traditions, you obviously know a lot about, but that kept coming back in reviews. And so I feel like, something, if you know a bit about that, you're really going to feel that in these books. But for somebody who doesn't know a bit, I feel like I'm learning and getting a peek into a world that I don't know a lot about. And I very much appreciate that. I don't know. Go ahead.
That was one thing that I really, really wanted to focus on when I was writing it. I knew that I wanted to write a book that I wanted to read, and I wanted it to be, I wanted it to depict the witchcraft differently. It's often, I mean, obviously there's some fantastical elements to it just because it's, a fantasy novel, but the roots I wanted to remain very true. And I wanted it to appeal to people who are really knowledgeable about that subject, but also introduce it in a way where people could be interested by it and not completely overwhelmed with what was going on, like it would, some sort of textbook, which, I mean, some people might think that, but it was in a way that it was conversational and instructional. And I tried to keep it really interesting throughout the book in that way.
I love fiction that makes me want to look something up later. And I really feel like that your book, and I haven't read the second one yet. I haven't, I'm not there yet, but I really feel like that was something I felt reading your books, because like I was getting enough to I'm following the storyline, I'm into the story, all of that. But then at the end, I'm like, what is this? Like, is that real? How does that work? And I love that. It's like fiction that's also teaching me something or
Right.
wanting me to learn more. And
Sure.
you do that perfectly in this book.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have another question. Are you focused more Wiccan or Crowley magic or voodoo or Norse paganism, spiritualism? What's your focus?
I feel like for me personally, I'm more spiritual, I guess is what I would say, which is often why I use the term mystic practitioner, is because, and a lot of people don't like people that cherry pick different things from different modalities and things like that. But that's one of the beauties, I think, is that, things that resonate with you personally are the things that you should explore and practice. And there's no one right way to do something. So, and I don't identify as Wiccan. There are some elements that are shared among different things that are very common in Wicca. But me personally, I don't follow that specifically.
All right, I'm going to take us back to travel a little bit. So you mentioned that in your books, your characters travel a bit. But also, if you read your bio, you have traveled quite a bit. And you did mention that when you were like growing up, you made this idea for yourself that you wanted to travel around. Where did that come from? I guess going back to that bit that you mentioned earlier, and then also like, how did you manifest that through the years? No pressure. That's a big question. Sorry about that.
I think the one thing that I can say about myself is that when I really want to do something, I make it happen through some way. And I always knew that I wanted to see other places. I knew that I wanted to travel and live other places. And I tend to get bored a lot when I stay in one place for too long. I mean, traveling is great and I love to do it, but I also love being around these places longer than traveling will often allow. So, that was something that I get really excited about. I love different cultures and different places in the world and seeing how that works. Because I mean, different countries are basically like different worlds, and sometimes, and it's so fascinating to me that I really like it. I love it.
So how long have you been in New Orleans?
2016 is when I first moved here.
All right. So, I mean, what do you think? Are you going to make ice cream somewhere else? What?
It is very hot here.
True.
It was kind of a nice change at first, and I was like, yeah, this is different, because I was coming from Chicago where it's like 60 below and snow is like 9 months out of the year. So it was a nice change of pace. But the heat is a lot for me. So, and I took a few trips out to the Pacific Northwest because I've never really spent a lot of time out there, and that area is kind of calling to me a little bit. And part of that is the landscape. I really like to hike, and that's a great place for it. There's so many different varieties of terrain there, and so I'm thinking about that, but nothing has been set.
It's in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
The Pacific Northwest is a beautiful place, and like you said, it does have so many different terrains within. I mean, you drive an hour and a half in each direction, and you're hitting totally different areas.
Yeah, completely different.
My husband is from that area. My in-laws lived up there, and so I spent a lot of time there visiting over the last 20 years. And it's just it really is this beautiful place.
Yeah.
And so much. I mean, it's so different from here too, that it is like going to like you said, like a different world. And here in America, the U.S. is so big, you can hit like the four corners, and it is like totally different worlds, like different countries. So.
It's wild. Oh, and I do miss seasons. I do miss snow. As much as I hated on it when I was in Chicago, I do like it. I like a more mild winter. It doesn't need to be like 9 feet of snow, but I do appreciate it.
I feel like this is as far north as I will ever live. love to visit. I will
Really?
visit anywhere you'll take me. But this is about as far north because I say that we have fashionable seasons here.
Hmm.
It's gets just cold enough in the winter to wear a scarf and cute tights and boots, but not so cold that I need a coat to survive. And I'm
Right.
good. I'm good. That's where I want to live. I want to live right there.
That's fair.
Um, every few years, it will either snow a little bit here, or it's close enough where if I want to see it, I could drive for an hour and a half and go see snow. Isn't that fun?
Right. And then
And then
return.
drive back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm originally from Southwest Florida, where there's just no seasons, just hot all the time. So I
Right.
do like it here, where we do have seasons. Leaves do fall off trees. That was something that only
Yeah.
happened in movies and picture books growing up. You know, in Florida, that just doesn't happen. So I
Right.
enjoy that. Um, but so, where's the coldest place? I saw Iceland. That you lived in Iceland. Is that the coldest place you've ever lived?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I grew up in Minnesota, and
That's
I feel like that's probably actually colder. There's a little more. I mean, the weather in Iceland could be a little bit more extreme in the center of the country where a lot of people, there's like not a lot of population really. But I mean, as far as overall, like, Minnesota was just excruciatingly cold. I mean, it was sometimes they wouldn't cancel school until it got to 60 below. And we would then it would be,
gosh.
yeah.
Like, I can
So
imagine now, are they calling off school all the time there now? Because, I mean, they call off school here, and, like, I know more in general now than they ever did when we were growing up. So, snow or hurricane or whatever. I wonder if nowadays kids in Minnesota get more days too.
uh-oh, it cut out a minute.
Oh, no. I was just talking about kids in Minnesota who are getting more snow days and more off days now than we did when we were kids, similar to where it feels like everywhere.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't get very many snow days at all when I was younger. I think I maybe had like two total, and I just had to kind of suffer through that wind and snow.
Well, that's the same growing up in Florida. I mean, the hurricane was coming before school was up. Like the trees are starting to blow. They're like, I guess maybe they don't need to come in today. And we're like, my family, we were usually evacuating for the hurricane. Like if it was coming, we were gone. My mom had already
Yeah,
taken us out of school for the day, but they wouldn't call off school until literally like the wind's blowing. They're like, I guess they don't need to come in.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
like 2 days ahead of time, they're like, maybe they can't come into school. Let's see.
Right.
This
It
one
was
thing
always
about
very
having
last
kids.
minute.
No, that's one thing about like kids in school. They did not tell me. Like they say, oh, your kid's gonna go to school now. Your kid's in school all the time. Kid is not in school all the time. They have 50 million
Right.
breaks all year on top of
Yeah.
hurricane days, and it's too cold and the power's out. And I'm like, he's never in school.
Right.
Anyway, I digress. When were you in Iceland? What time of year?
I think I arrived in May, possibly. Um, when I went there for work, I arrived in, I believe, May. So I kind of spent the nicest time there, and I kind of left right before it got really cold again. And I'd been there in the winter before, just visiting, but not for an extended amount of time.
Okay. Since I have a trip planned in July. Fingers crossed, that's still happening, which is the warmest part. But
Yeah,
I've been collecting, anecdotal data.
for
Yeah,
sure.
tips and tricks. I'm there.
That is the best time to go. It's going to be so good.
So you said that you have a third book coming out.
Hmm.
When is that happening?
I took a little bit of a longer break after the second one, because I basically almost wrote those like back to back, so that was a lot. But the third and final one of that series, I finished the outline a few weeks ago, and I am now just starting the actual first draft, which I started, I think it was yesterday or the day before. So I'm hoping that it'll be finished by the end of this year.
Okay, so that was, yeah, how long does it take you to finish? And so about a year.
Yeah, from start to finish, like I think on average it's about 6 months to have everything fit, like the actual writing done, like the a draft that I feel comfortable with anyway. And then there's all the, the extra stuff going back and revising and, editing, having the editor go through it and revising again. So that takes a little bit of time as well.
Do you kind of edit yourself as you go through? I know there's like some people just sit down and write and then go back, and other people like kind of write and go back and write and go back as they go along. How do you do that?
For me personally, I've always been a fan of going from start to finish, which is also kind of rare. I feel like a lot of writers pop around and do this scene here and this chapter there. But I will start and I'll just go from start to finish, and I won't worry about any sort of editing or revising until later. I feel like when I start doing that and I go, oh, well, let me just try to fix this last paragraph or this chapter. Let me look at this again, and then I feel like it takes me a lot longer to get where I'm going than rather than just finishing it all at once and going, because you can always change something. And I feel like once you're in that flow of continuing to write, it's much easier to keep going rather than stopping and trying to analyze every segment. So that's what I do that works for me.
Yeah, the only time I ever finished anything of any length was when I did NaNoWriMo one year, because it's the same thing. It forces you always get caught up in the something.
Right.
But you got to hit that 50,000 by the end of the month. All of a sudden,
Right.
you got to get the words on the page.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is hidden in a file folder somewhere. I've never gone back and really dug into it, and in my mind, it's great.
Right.
I'm afraid to touch it. But yeah, like I always stick to shorter things, and that seems to I can seem to get from A to B in shorter things, and then anytime I need something to kind of push me through that.
Right.
But being on book 3 already in a series kind of pushes you through it in a way. You've built your own deadline in that it's unfinished, and
right.
there are people who need to know.
Yeah, people read faster than I think that they do. So they'll reach out and they'll be like, when is this coming out? What's going on? I'm like, what? That just came out. Like, what? I can't write that fast.
I know, but I always
it's
feel
wild.
sort of weird about those types of questions. In a series, it's not as much of a strange question. Okay, there's a third in a series. When is that happening? But if it's unrelated, I'm like, okay, look, I know it just came out today.
Yeah.
But when can I read more of your stuff? Because it was really good. And they're like,
I don't know.
I hope soon.
Yeah.
Like, oops, I'm sorry. I should have pre-asked that question.
Yeah.
That's why I like to read series that are already finished, if possible. Yes. Wow.
I know a few people that actually said that. They said that, hey, normally I don't read series until they're fully done because I want to go straight through. It's like, it's like a Netflix binge. You're just like, oh, I want to know everything all at once right now. And I get that because I'm the same way. So from a reader's perspective, I totally get it. And I want that. And then from a writer's perspective, it's like, whew, it's a lot to handle right away.
It is. Well, also you want, if you work on them in that way, you want it to come out. You want to see the fruits of your labor, and then you want the next one and know, and that's so you don't want to hold them. Actually,
right.
To wrote recently, and she wrote 5 books and then held them. Like she held the first ones, didn't even do anything with them until she had them all done, so that she could. They're coming out like 2 months after.
Oh, that's smart.
Well, I was like, yeah,
I mean,
it sounds great on this end.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
On this end, yes, it sounds like a great idea, but I can't imagine like putting all of that work and effort and then just going, nope, I'm gonna sit there right over there. We're kind of not like forget.
Like no reward at all, just complete dedication. That's hard. That's very hard.
Yeah, somebody needs to give me a sticker or something. I need something. Some reason to push forward.
For sure.
So, is it too early to ask where she's going in the third one? Assuming there's travel involved?
There sort of. There is some movement. It's not necessarily completely new place, but there will be some elements that are new with some roots of where they are now.
That was good. That was very well put. Gave nothing away. I love it.
Try to unpack that one.
Right? Okay. So I want to touch back on creativity. There's a question that was earlier about creativity, and I've kind of thought of a follow-up idea. You have your writing as a creative outlet for sure, but when I look at your website and all of the flavors and stuff that are available with your ice cream, how much of that creativity, like how much of it is just like, oh, I think orange and almond go good together, and how much of it does that creative element come in? Do you feel that when you're doing this?
I think it kind of depends on what the flavor is or what the concept is. Because I do a lot of musically inspired ice cream. So if, for instance, with one of those, like I'll look at if there's, let's say I'll take one like Black Lake is one of the more famous ones that I've done, and that's a music video or a song by Bjork, and I would look at the music video, I would look at the mood and the theme of it, and I would take a look at the lyrics. And so I would try to incorporate and interpret all of those things into flavor. So I would take all that, okay, well, what is this about? How can I translate this mood or emotion into a flavor? And what would that look like, and what would that taste like, and what should that be, and what could it be? And then there's also the visual element as well. So I always try to think about it from all these different ways so that I can come up with something that is very different, but also that works well together. So I have to think about that kind of after the fact. I'll start to get all these different ideas, and then I'll start kind of narrowing it down to what I think or know will work together.
All right, I'm going to pitch a release party for book 3. Are you ready?
Ready.
No, you don't have to do this, but here we go. You have ice cream flavor inspired by the series or just the last book. Party, book signing, talk about the book, tiny little cups of ice cream.
I don't know why I haven't thought about that. That's actually a pretty smart idea, though. I don't know why that never occurred to me.
You know where I'll be in about a year.
Yeah.
So I know that I can get Elizabeth and Leon on board with this ice cream concept. So I don't need to spy anyone. You do what the release day is.
I'm down with that. That'll be a nice challenge too. That'll be exciting. And I saw that look in their eyes when I gave them the ice cream. They were really excited.
You've seen, we watched the segment. We said, how do we get some ice cream? And I was like, well, what if I just email him? And Leon's like, okay. And I was like, I mean, worst case, we don't get ice cream, and we don't have ice cream now. So and then you said, oh, you'll bring Spy, and she's like, what? And I was like, there's gonna be ice cream.
Yeah.
Yay! Oh my gosh. So well, Ryan, it has been a pleasure talking to you this evening.
Likewise.
Everyone, thank you for hanging out with us this evening. Thank you for commenting. And I'm going to put the link to our website again in the comments. You can get all of Ryan's books either from stopping into the shop or through our website. We have signed copies on our shelves. So if you stop in, or if you get them from our website, we'll usually just pull one from our shelf and give you a signed copy too. But you can put a little comment in there and say, I'd like a signed copy, and we'll make sure you get a signed copy. And Ryan, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. This was fun.
Excellent. I will talk to you later. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.